After Tom and I were married, we went to visit my parents at the farm one Memorial Day weekend. I had told Tom about my experience of finding the hillside covered with flowers, and then they had all died. He wanted to see the spot, so we walked to the area, and there was the hillside, again all covered with flowers. This was the mystery of appearing and disappearing flowers. So I turned to Steve Kelly from Kelly and Kelly Nurseries for answers. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you.
What do you suppose my plants were that were appearing in the spring and then disappearing in the summer and fall?
Well, from your description of the spring ephemeral, I suspect it was a pasque flower on the prairies.
What is an ephemeral?
I think you described it well, something that appears and then disappears. So an ephemeral might be something that comes up in the spring, blooms, and then fades away, unlike perennials, which are there all summer long.
How did Kelly and Kelly get to be known for your spring ephemerals?
Well, back in, I would say, the 50s or 60s, two of my great uncles who started the business had an interest in wildflowers. So they would go out and, this isn't done anymore, they would go out to the roadsides and the hillsides and collect wildflowers. We've been in business for 100 springs this very year. Started the company in 1922, right on the old Kelly family homestead, across the street from where we're standing. Uncle Rod was a landscape architect, and Uncle Bill was a land surveyor. And it was at a time around Lake Minnetonka here, which is a great, one of the larger lakes in Minnesota, the big Grant estates were developing. A lot of people were moving out from the cities, Minneapolis and St. Paul, and building their properties on Lake Minnetonka. And so you might think of early 1920s as being kind of rough times to start a business, but they really took advantage of some of those great landowners who needed landscaping. We're a small company, so we have to have a niche. We're out in the country, we're not on a main thoroughfare, so it's not something that people just drive by and say, oh, let's stop here. We're a small company, as I say, only about 10 or 12 people in the summertime, evenly divided between the landscaping and the garden center.
You have a lot of ephemerals here in your own garden, is that correct?
Right. My wife and I, Arla, are great gardeners, professionally and for fun. So we're standing in the garden where, we can see a lot of ephemerals still poking along. A lot of them have gone by the wayside already. At the nursery, we started under the shade of elm trees. A lot of the spring ephemerals love the woodland areas. So they cultivated the ground up. It was beautiful, rich soil we have here in Orono. And they started from seeds or cuttings or plants that they had purloined from the roadsides.
Are most ephemerals in the woods, or are they on the prairies, or some of both?
I'd say some of both, but mostly we are here dealing with the ones that are woodland native wildflowers.
Why are ephemerals so common in the woods?
Well, I think part of it has to do with soil. A lot of the woodland soils are moist and rich from all the leaves that fall down or rot away. And a lot of the ephemerals take advantage of spring sunshine before the leaves develop on the trees. So they'll come up, bloom before the leaves come out of the trees, and then fade away as the shade emerges.
How do ephemerals reproduce?
A lot of them reproduce by seed. We can think of jack-in-the-pulpits with that marvelous cluster of red fruit in the fall. They'll drop the seeds, or the birds will scatter the seeds, or they'll spread by underground roots.
If they kind of tend to die down, are there some that keep their foliage longer?
Yes. The mayapple, which I would consider a spring ephemeral, often has its foliage lasting well into June or July. Bloodroot holds the foliage a little while longer. Hepatica might be considered a spring ephemeral, but for us it holds its foliage throughout the season.
Steve, why do the plants tend to lose their foliage?
That's their life cycle. They've done what they need to do. They've flowered, they've produced seeds, their roots have increased for the next generation, and then they're done for the year. Besides which, the foliage, the woodland native ephemerals, the foliage comes out on the trees, producing pretty dense shade, and then, no, there's not much more for the plant to do.
Steve, are there different classifications or kinds of ephemerals?
Well, we can think of the native and the non-native. Most of the ones we grow here are natives, simply because we just enjoy that simplicity of the flower and the plant. And then non-native might be exemplified by this little primrose here, which is not native at all, but it is a spring ephemeral, and we can classify it as non-native.
And is that hardy here?
Very hardy here. We've had this in the garden for at least 15 years.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Isn't it gorgeous? But we plant it amongst other things because when it dies down, obviously it's going to leave a big hole there. So that's the beauty of that. The garden is in layers here. We've got spring things that'll fade away, and then the next scene will come on.